Hello, what's up, everyone? Thank you all so much for joining us for another great video meetup today, sponsored by Logitech. As always, I'm your host, Justin Ong. We've got a great show for y'all today. We're going to be talking all about best practices for outfitting boardrooms, larger conference rooms, even up to classrooms with video conferencing. For more on this, we've got a great panel of experts for y'all today, including an IT pro from the Spiceworks Community, as well as an expert from Logitech. So without further ado, let's go ahead and kick it off with a round of introductions. Batting first, he is usually on the other side of chat, but we have managed to talk him into being on this side of the camera. Everyone, please give a warm welcome to Mr. Ben Setliff. Ben, welcome to the show today. How's it going?
Going great, going great. I enjoy being on these. Having a great time.
Ben, for those who haven't met you before, at least in real life, do you mind telling us a little about yourself and what you do?
Sure. I'm an IT guy at a bank. I work at Lone Star State Bank, and most people know I've got 7 kids. I never have any downtime. Always fixing computers, putting out fires, or playing with babies. It's always fun.
Now, Ben, we've talked about this before the show. I think you actually have the nicest office of anyone I've ever done a show with, and that includes the marketers as well. How'd you end up lucky? Did the guy before you just like bequeath it to you, or you just get lucky?
It's the location. It's actually a corner office, and it's got a big closet right here. It's where we keep all of our. It's kind of my lab. I've got a lab set up in there. It's all of our storage and stuff. But the location, we're looking out of my office. You can see, pretty much everyone can see into my office. So my boss didn't want this office, so I got this one. It just kind of fell to me. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. What you guys watching at home don't see is Ben's driving range that's over to the side, and then his boutique coffee full barista setup that he's got over there as well.
I do.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today, Ben. Looking forward to hearing from you. Our next panelist from Logitech is Mr. Alan Smith. Alan, welcome to the show. How's it going today?
Hey, very well, very well. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah. Alan, do you mind telling us a little about yourself and what you do for Logitech?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been at Logitech for, I just started about 20 years ago. And I've been doing a lot of different things at Logitech. For the last 6 or 7 years, I've been working in the video collaboration group, and I'm a product manager, and I manage some of our headsets, our Meetup product, Rally group, most of our conference cams. So that's kind of what I do to keep myself busy, at least at work.
Well, we're going to hear all about the Rally cam and the Rally ecosystem in a little bit, but before we get into that, I did want to touch on a couple of housekeeping items. As those of you who are the regulars, we love having you back. But for those of you who it's your first time, if you guys have questions for Ben and Alan, make sure to get those questions into Q&A. That's in that widget that you see down below. We'll be taking your questions later on in the show. And make sure to check out all of the resources that Logitech has provided. If you would like more information about the Rally system, you can check that out in the resources. A lot of good stuff there. Also, if you would like to pop open chat and say hi to folks, we'd love to have you. Always great to see some of our favorite regulars, including at IT, Jim Forrest, what's going on, everyone, as well as Ben. You will probably see him in chat as well. Of course, if you guys do want to hang out in chat, we of course ask that you make sure that you follow the community guidelines and make sure that you're keeping the professional in IT pro. And we hope that everyone has a good, positive, and professional time. So without further ado, oh wait, just kidding. Before we get any further, there is a prize for one of you guys that is joining us today. One of you guys is going to win a Logitech Rally conference system, which is not a cheap product or a prize to win. So this is a great giveaway. Thank you, Logitech. And if you have any questions about it, you can ask Ben, because he's been playing around with one for a few weeks now. So which is what we'll get into it today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started into it. Alan, it probably makes sense to just kind of start out with you and kind of talking a little bit about the Rally. And I think there's a lot of folks that are on today that have seen quite a few events from Logitech, and we've talked about a lot of different offerings that you guys have. Can you describe to us a little bit about what is the Rally system and where does it fit within the Logitech family?
Sure. Yeah, no problem. So Logitech Rally is designed for mid to large conference room, and it consists primarily of I suppose, three main parts. There is the 4K camera that you can see here. We have either one or two speakers, depending on which flavor of Rally you buy. We have one that's Rally, one that's Rally Plus. The difference is Rally has one speaker, one mic. Rally Plus has two speakers, two mics. The mic pods you can see here that I'm using, and this is actually, we're on Rally now. And then, so there's the camera, the audio part, and then there are these two hubs here that are designed as kind of connection points from at the table and also at the display. So Rally is currently our top of the line system. We announced it at, ISE or InfoComm, I think, last year. We shipped the standalone camera about 4 or 5 months ago, and we just started shipping the system at the end of last year. And I suppose probably the way to describe it within the line is if you've got kind of a mid-size to a larger size room, we would recommend that you would use Rally. If you're using a small huddle room, then probably the Meetup, which I believe actually is what Ben is using now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So like we've talked about, this is geared more towards, mid to large size meeting rooms, usually boardrooms, sometimes even classrooms. What specific elements about the Rally system make them better suited for those types of environments?
Yeah, so flexibility is probably the main part. So for example, maybe just before I go there, a little bit about the topology of the system. So I mentioned the hubs. Typically what you're going to have is you're going to have the speakers sit up by the display, the camera up by the display, of course, the microphones on the table, and then there's a hub that goes at the table, and then there's a hub that goes at the display. These provide the connection points. This is typically going to live like behind the display, and this is going to usually be like we have here that's mounted under the table. So I have the flexibility of saying, okay, if I want the meeting room computer at the table, I can have it at the table and connect it to the table hub. If I want to have it hidden beyond the display, I can have it connected to the display hub. So the compute can connect to either hub. It has the ability to have, as I mentioned before, either one or two speakers, depending on the room size or the aesthetics. It also has the ability to expand up to 7 mic pods. And so you can go from so in this particular room, this room is about 25 feet long. We have 2 mic pods sitting on it, on the table. The table is about 15 feet long. Picks up the room pretty well, but I can go up to 7 mic pods, as I mentioned. And so if I've got maybe a U-shaped table, I can run mic pods all the way around it. If I've got a really long table, like up in our boardroom, we've got a much longer table. We can run mic pods down the center of it. So it's really the flexibility that I think makes it stand out for the mid and large size rooms.
Okay. Ben, let's talk to you next. You've been kind of test driving the Rally for a little while, but before we get into your experience, can you talk to us a little about how you guys utilize video conferencing and kind of, are your needs in this wheelhouse a little bit where we're talking larger meeting rooms and boardrooms?
Yeah, our main boardroom can hold about, it's got chairs for 14 people and then seating around the edges and standing room for probably another 20 or 30 more. And we use it mainly for board meetings. We have 5 branches, and each of those branches in their boardrooms, they have a giant big screen TV, and so they can watch the main board meeting happen at the main branch. We use them regularly for security meetings and for information security trainings. Mm-hmm. And we have the Meetup right now in my office. I stole it out of one of our smaller boardrooms. It's just a meeting, like a little conference room, and they also have the same. They have the same giant TV in them, but it's perfect for our needs. The Rally is loud enough. We have the Rally Plus, and so with 2 speakers, it's loud enough for everybody in the room to hear all the way back to the back. And there's 2 tabletop mics, one at each end of the giant boardroom table, and you can hear everybody perfectly clearly.
Mm-hmm. So prior to using the Rally, what had you guys been using in that place?
It's kind of embarrassing. We were using an iPad using FaceTime, okay. And at every boardroom they had FaceTime set up between like two different modes. So it's kind of chaining it out. Like one was on FaceTime and that would go to the next boardroom. And then that one was on FaceTime looking at that screen going to the next boardroom. And it was embarrassing, to say the least.
So everyone was gathered around this iPad. That was kind of how the meetings were held then.
Yeah, exactly. And for a bank, that's usually not as fancy as it could be. But yeah, the price point that they were looking at when they installed the boardrooms, the price point was closer to $25,000, and the product would have been, pretty comparable to what the Rally system offers, but not anywhere near the resolution a decade ago. And the price point on the Rally, I believe, was it $2,500, $2,600, and that's beautiful. As soon as I told them that, they were like, "Order me 5 more as soon as they're available." And so that's what we'll be doing.
So have you gotten to test the Rally like with the users, or have you been just kind of playing around with it in your own personal testing?
Yeah, I have Skyped with it a few times just to test it out between a couple of friends of mine, and they wanted to. A few of them are YouTubers, and they wanted to see it, and so I took it home one time and let them play with it a little bit. But yeah, it's kind of fun.
How do you anticipate? Like the crowding around the iPad. I know it's not ideal from just like a business perspective, but do you actually feel like that user experience can actually be impeded by not having a more boardroom appropriate video conferencing solution?
Oh yeah, absolutely. People would zone out. People wouldn't pay attention. People would just wait and listen, read the notes later, read the meeting notes. And a lot of times you can hear side conversations happening because really people just aren't paying attention. If they can't see the screen, they can't see what's going on. If they know that they're not on camera, then they're not going to be paying attention. It's just kind of like high school all over again, but that's the way it goes.
Alan, let's go back to you. You've talked about the appeal of this being the flexibility and the modularity of the Rally system. Do you guys find that there are different, I guess you could say, archetypes of conference rooms? Maybe that's too literary, but is every conference room a unique snowflake, or do they tend to kind of group themselves into types of categories?
They're probably more similar than they are different, I think. Typically what you're going to have is either most of the meeting rooms go to now use flat panel displays. There are still a few that use projectors, and there are some interesting things in short throw projectors that are coming out. But most of it's 1 or 2 displays. Most of our bigger rooms here at Logitech and a lot of the customers that we work with use 2 displays. It's just, you have one content on one, the video feed for the participants on the other. So that's kind of a nice way of doing it. And then really it's more of kind of how the table lines out. Either, a straight table, some we've seen some that are like V-shaped, oval tables, round tables, and that's really the primary difference, I think. But again, it tend to be bigger rooms. There's often a table and then maybe some space on the sides for people to sit as well for some of the bigger rooms. But it's fairly consistent.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In previous conversations I've had with Vic from Logitech, he's mentioned that a lot of folks are starting to go towards like a guitar pick shaped table because it may look better for video conferencing. Are you guys seeing any, adoption in that, or is it really kind of for really specific broadcasting purposes?
No, I think it's, even this table here is actually slightly wedge shaped. You can't really see it because of the frame that I've got it on. But the wedge shape, again, just kind of the people further away are a little bit closer in. And so it just makes it easier for the camera to see everyone. So I guess you could say this is kind of a step between a regular rectangular table and the guitar pick shape. But what we're seeing now is especially with, I guess you could say, the democratization of video conferencing, and it's with the cloud-based computing or cloud-based applications running on a computer. It's just so easy and relatively inexpensive to do video conferencing. And so consequently, what we're seeing is more people are saying, instead of saying, we're just going to put a speakerphone in the middle of the table and, just kind of focus on voice, let's make this a video first room because, as Ben said, it's just the experience is so much better on video. People can see, they can be seen. And so what we see is that people are kind of setting up the room to be more video first. and I think that's where the Rally is strong for.
Okay. Now, what about for those folks that are working in education, because that's another big use case, obviously, for something like this. What similarly do classrooms tend to be pretty similar or fall into types of categories? And how does the modularity of the Rally system support those?
Yeah. So, what we're seeing is a couple of things. So, we see a lot of educators who are either broadcasting live their lectures or they're recording them for later presentations. So, in other words, there are some that are more interactive and some that are more just a guy presenting. And a lot of what we're seeing is, which is kind of interesting, is they'll have almost like a regular meeting room setup. So in other words, I've got a camera in the front, just like I do here. But then what they'll do is they'll actually take a second camera, and this can be actually mounted to the ceiling upside down, and they'll put that at the back of the room. And then within the application, Zoom or Teams or Skype for Business or whatever, you just switch between the cameras, and then you can kind of get either a view of the audience from the front camera or a view of the instructor from the rear camera. So it's kind of a simple, easy way to set up a room, and pretty simple to have a kind of a nice dynamic view, and then also great audio as well.
Okay, cool. Alan, let's talk more specifically about the camera. For example, we got a question from JR Lepper. Are the cameras PTZ? And can you talk to us a little bit about what that means and why people would need to know about PTZ cameras?
Yeah, of course. It's a motorized pan, tilt, and zoom camera, maybe just a little bit of the speeds and feeds. It is a 4K camera. It does 15x zoom. As I mentioned, it can be mounted upside down if you want. So it can be ceiling mounted. There's a standard, quarter 20-inch thread, quarter 20 thread on the bottom of it. The nice thing is that it will automatically switch the image and the remote control functionality. So the remote control isn't backwards after you turn it upside down. It's very simple to be able to, look at there's the remote control right there. So the other thing is, because it's, speaking of the remote control is actually using Bluetooth Low Energy as opposed to IR. And so I don't have to worry about actually, making sure I'm aiming at the camera to get the remote control to work. So, the remote is designed either, usually when I use the remote, I just leave it on the table and do it that way. You can hold it if you want. But again, even in a situation where, say, I had a camera at the back of the room and I wanted to change it, I don't have to worry about pointing the remote at it, which is kind of it's not a night and day feature, but it's just kind of a nice adder to it.
All right, cool. Ben, let's talk to you. What does PTZ mean for you, in your opinion? And based on your users' use cases that you described, is this something that you feel like is a big positive for them?
I think it's easier for me. I can place the hardware anywhere I need it, and then point the camera to the spot that I need the person to be on camera. I say the zoom feature is crazy. I mean, with that Rally system, I could be sitting at the back of our boardroom, and it would be zoomed in on my face, just like this Rally is right now. The Rally's maybe 2 feet from my face right now, but the Meetup is about 2 feet from my face. But that Rally is impressive on that zoom. 15x zoom is really, really amazing. As far as user features, it's plug and play. You plug everything in. Everything has its own shape of socket. You can't screw it up, and you plug in the USB cord to a computer, and it's good to go.
Alan, are you on a Rally right now?
I am, yeah.
Do you want to show folks the zoom and kind of the mobility of the camera using the remote?
Yeah, sure. So the I'm trying to think what's interesting to zoom in on. So the camera has a 90-degree side-to-side panning. So I can actually see this. Now we're looking at the side of the television. Let me try zooming in to see if there's something. Let's see. There's a sign there. Oops! I just hit the home button. So I've just got one of the presets set to zoom in on the table here. Zoom out. Yeah, so there are 2 presets on there. Yeah, just from a use case, what we've done is we've designed it so there is in the middle of the directional pad, there's a home button, and so when I'm using the camera, I can actually set the home position and then to wherever I want it. Because for example, if you mount it above the TV, this is sitting like in the middle of 2 displays. If I mount it above the TV, when I start the meeting, I actually want it to probably point down a little bit. And so I can set the home position. Every time I start a meeting, it goes to the home position automatically. Now, when you're talking about panning and pan, tilt, and zoom, there's probably something that makes sense to talk about now. And that is part of the technology we call right sight that goes along with the camera. So right sight is a number of things that really just help improve the overall visual experience of the camera. One of the probably the more interesting parts of that is the ability to do auto framing. So this is something that we have available on Meetup that Ben is using now, and so and will be available shortly with Rally. So what happens is you've probably all experienced, you call into a video conference, there's one guy sitting in it like me, but you see the entire room, right? And the person you're actually interested in seeing is this little, small figure in the middle of this huge frame. So what the camera will do is it will actually scan the entire room. It will see the bodies in the room and then automatically crop down to the people within the room. So it's just a really nice feature. It's simple. When you start talking about pan, tilt, and zoom, it's almost getting to the point with using this right sight technology, you almost don't need to do it anymore because the camera is going to be doing most of what you want to do automatically. So it's, and if someone leaves, if someone comes, and so more people, less people, it will periodically adjust. And so, it's just fitting the room. One of the nice things about the auto cropping, I think, is that, if you talk about communication, they say that, anywhere from 80 to 90% of communication is nonverbal. So in other words, it's just things you're seeing instead. And so what's nice about being able to see the room and the people in it and have a good view of that is, maybe I'm saying something and across the table, my boss is kind of doing this like, whoa, and so that's going to tell people who are watching something about what's being said that is nonverbal, right? So not only speaks to the richness of video conferencing over audio, but also the nice part about the auto cropping is you're able to see the people and their reactions as well. So again, available right now on Meetup that Ben's using, and will be available as a public beta at the end of the month for Rally, and then the full release in the March timeframe.
Okay. I wanted to ask about the 4K capabilities. Do you guys find that at this point there are a good amount of apps that are taking advantage of 4K? Do you expect that to become more prevalent down the line? Let's hear from Alan first and then hear from Ben after that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as video conferencing, there really isn't much in the way of 4K available currently. And so I guess will it happen? Absolutely. How quickly, who knows? But so that's the nice thing. So 2 things, the advantage. One is that Rally is, future-proof. So when 4K does become available, you don't have to upgrade your hardware. The other thing is, even if I'm using lower resolution, because of the lens assembly, the sensor that we use to be able to support 4K, you're actually going to get a better image, even if you're using 1080p, 720p, just because it's better optics package altogether.
Okay, so you don't need a 4K application in order to take advantage of the better hardware.
Right.
Okay, cool. Ben, can you talk us through kind of the apps that you guys use for video conferencing, and anything that you would add as far as the video quality based on your experience with the Rally?
Skype, GoToMeeting. We have outsourced our ISO, and he uses. There's another one. I can't remember off the top of my head. There's another one that he uses, and it all works. It's all working flawlessly. I think Jesse was asking in the chat about demonstrating the right sense. Let me press the button and see what it does, and kind of zoom out and see my office, and it just kind of finds me and puts it back in the screen. And so I mean that's the button that I use to go back and do that. Yeah, WebEx. Thank you, Charlie. Good job, buddy. And WebEx is the one our ISO uses. And having the hardware capability of doing 4K, it just makes everything ready for when the software can do 4K. It's just it'll be a nice, easy transition.
Cool. Dim Forest says he's just using the camera to brag about his office. So, yep, you're definitely on to him.
You got me.
Alan, and let's talk, before we go to the questions from the audience, can you talk to us about a little more about the microphones? And in particular, how do I know how many microphones I need? You can have as many microphones as you want. That doesn't necessarily mean you should have one per person or anything, does it?
Yeah. I'll talk maybe both about the mics and the speakers before we go to questions. So the microphones, each mic pod has 4 microphone elements in it, and it's doing beamforming that's producing 8 beams. And so most of us are familiar with beamforming. What it's doing is it's, every 8 milliseconds, it's looking for the active talker. And so in this case, it's me. And so what it's doing is there's one beam that's focusing on me, and the other 7 beams are attenuated. And so what that's doing is help reduce reverbs, help reducing some of the ambient noise. So it's got a nice pickup, but it's not picking up a lot of extraneous noise. Of course, each mic pod has capacitive touch mute on it. I'll show you here when I mute it, you can see it goes red. And then, it's I'm not sure how it shows up on the video, but it is white. It's white on the in real life here. So as far as spacing, each mic pod is designed for about a 15-foot diameter pickup range. And, some of the room acoustics are going to affect that one way or the other, but 50 feet, I think, is a reasonable conservative estimate. So, but again, think of the circles. If you have a couple of mic pods, you actually want them to overlap a little bit so there aren't space in between. So if you figure, 9 to 10 feet apart of the microphones, that kind of gives you the right spacing as far as the maximum spacing for the mic pods. You can put them a little bit closer if you want. We've actually had some who have deployed probably more than necessary mic pods just because they want people to have easier access to the mute button on the mics. So that's another interesting consideration beyond purely the acoustics. Yeah, and there's a mute button on the remote control, of course. Yes. Then just switching over to the speakers. So the way we've designed the system is by separating the mics and the speakers. What we've done is we've designed the system such that the speakers were actually meant to be mounted up at the display. And what that does is that ties the voice and the person on the display, and you're seeing them together at the same place. So in other words, if this were a traditional meeting room and I had a speaker sitting in the middle of the table, I'd be watching you guys, but hearing your voice come from behind me. And so, it's not the end of the world to have that happen, but boy, it's a much more intuitive, richer experience to have the speakers up front. And so you can either have one or two. These are designed specifically for voice in that, you've got this external enclosure, but the driver, the speaker driver is actually sitting in a completely separate enclosure within that is then suspended by a bunch of little rubber shock absorbers. And so what's the point of that? All right. So one of the key elements of good voice communication for video conferencing is the echo canceller. And so the better the echo canceller works, the better the audio is going to sound generally. And so the echo canceller is really good at determining what it's supposed to be canceling out. So in other words, your voice coming through the speaker, but it's not very good at canceling out like reverberations or things like that. And so if you've got a speaker that's putting out some sound, you're going to have some vibration from the speaker enclosure. It's going to create some reverberation. It's going to influence the echo canceling. And so by having this enclosure within an enclosure, you get very, very little reverb from the speaker itself. So it just improves the audio experience overall, not only from a technical standpoint, but again, from having the speakers up front, it just sounds better.
Okay, cool. Ben, let's talk to you next. Can you tell us a little bit about how the boardrooms are set up? Is sound an issue for you guys? Do you anticipate, multiple microphones, and then how would you lay those out?
One of our boardrooms that we do anticipate setting up a rally in is right next to a highway. And so, yeah, that will need to be a pretty decent amount of noise cancellation and a pretty decent amount of volume being produced by the speakers. And I have no doubt that the rally can handle it. I was playing some tunes on it the other day, and it got pretty loud. CEO came in and told me to turn it down. So there's that.
So that's the other use case for the rally, is to throw like a sick party in the boardroom.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. You can stream the party to YouTube and make some money. Why not, right? But yeah, the conference rooms are pretty much all set up, I would say, just like a classroom. But I mean, there's a screen on one end, as if a whiteboard on one end, and then tables and chairs all pointed at the TV screen. As far as mic placement is concerned, you can just put two as far out as the cable will reach, and kind of close to one end of the room as the other one is, and call it good. That's the way I've done it, and it seems to work beautifully.
Cool. All right, and then Alan, I did want to mention, just have you talk a little bit about the cabling, because I know that's a big advantage to the Rally system as well.
Yeah, so thanks. So as I mentioned, we have these two hubs, and again, the hub that would be up at the display is where the camera is going to connect. The speakers are going to connect here. If I'm running the meeting room computer at the front of the table, at the front of the room, this is actually how I have it set up in this particular room. It would be connected here as well. And so all that stuff connected at the display, it's all kind of hidden behind the display, all the cabling. At the table, I've got another connection point for the mic pods are connected to the table. If I wanted to have the meeting room compute, say I'm using Skype for Business and I have an SRS system like the Logitech Smart Dock or something like that, or even a bring your own computer situation, I can then connect the computer here. I can also pass through up to 2 HDMI signals from the table hub to the display hub. And in between these two hubs, so this one living behind the screen, this one living underneath the table, there's just a single Cat6A cable that goes in between the two. So it's the cabling is pretty simple to do nicely. One cable between the tables and the display, and then just all the connections kind of at a centralized point. Maybe one other thing to talk about as far as cabling on the mic pod. So you have a couple of options on those. You can they can either be connected to each other via daisy chain. If you've got a table that doesn't have holes in it for grommets or something like that, I mean, that may be your best option. But in a situation where you're trying to minimize the cabling on the top of the table, you may not want to run the cable across between one mic and the other. So like what we've got here, I've got one mic pod here, one mic pod here, and we have an accessory product called the mic pod hub. That it's almost like a network hub that I can then connect up to 3 mic pods into, and that actually just attaches to the bottom of the table as well. Run the cables underneath to connect to the mics that way, and so it just makes a much more cleaner installation if that's your preference.
Okay, cool. All right, let's get into some questions. We've got a ton. This is maybe among the most questions that I've seen in a video meetup for quite some time, but we'll try to tackle at least a few of them. One question from Sushela. So when trying to convince higher up to spend for this, what's the real selling point that sets this system apart from other options out there? I'd love to get both Alan and Ben's take on it, but Alan, we'll start with you first.
I was curious to what Ben was going to say, but I'll go first. Okay. I think that what you're going to find is if you're using some sort of cloud-based computing, Zoom, Skype for Business, Teams, Slack, I mean whatever it is, WebEx, whatever you're using, then again there's no need for an incredibly expensive codec, and so you can just run a USB peripheral off of a computer, and it's gonna have pretty impressive performance. So what you can do is you can connect up Rally. So what you're going to get is again flexibility, excellent image quality, great audio performance, and nice wiring. And I think those are kind of the three things, audio, video, and wiring, that makes sense, are really what makes Rally stand apart, I think.
Ben, what are your thoughts?
All right. Well, from just the first point I would make is the price. I mean, the price is a tenth of what they were expecting to spend on a product like this. Being a bank, it is, I'm not going to say pretentious, but maybe a little bit. And they want something that looks professional. It has to look really good. It's kind of one of the same reasons that we use all Apple products, because people, like all of us, have Apple cell phones. I wouldn't normally, but that's the way it goes because it was free for me. But they want to look like we have money. And so the Logitech system is beautiful. I mean, it's clean, it's crisp, it sets up nicely, it looks like it's part of the room. And as far as yes, Dim, that's why I have these glasses. You get me distracted here. So another out of the box setup, it took about 10 minutes, and most of that was taken off twisty ties. That was it was really, really simple. As long as you have a computer already up and running in the room, you unplug everything, you plug it in, and it's done. USB cable into the computer, and it recognizes it just like any other Windows, like a webcam. It picks it up and it's going.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of working in a bank, that's actually another element to the PTZ camera that I've heard positive feedback on from people that I've talked to, is the fact that when it's off, the camera points downward. Is that something that, Alan, can you kind of talk a little bit about that? Is that just because it's cute, or is it actually like a security minded feature that you guys built into it?
Yeah, I mean, there's really two purposes. So what happens is, at the end of a video conference, what'll happen is the camera points down. I mean, this is kind of the view you would have from the meeting room. It points down. So really two purposes. One is, again, to give that feeling like, okay, I'm not being watched without my knowledge because the camera's pointing at the base. And then secondly, from a more practical standpoint, it keeps dust off the lens that way too when it's not being used. Okay.
Ben, is conference room security something that you guys are paying attention to these days?
Absolutely. I mean, you have to be aware of all forms of engineering, social engineering specifically. We have walkthroughs that we do regularly to see what you can see on people's screens, what you can see from when you look in the windows outside the bank. If you can see something on someone's screen and there's sensitive information on there, then that person gets a mark against them on that. As far as that camera feature, whenever I showed that to my boss, I turned the camera off. You close the Skype session, the camera spins back around and points down. He was like, that's perfect. That is amazing. Because it's not like a mounted camera in the corner of the room that's like a security camera that's always watching you. And so that was a great selling point. When as soon as he saw that it did that, it was pretty cool.
Awesome. Cool. Alan, let's go back to you. We've got a couple of questions. Can you clarify, like PLA Mont wanted to know, are you able to add in a second camera into the Rally system, or is that not something that you guys recommend?
Yeah, so the way you would use the second camera is actually plug the second camera into the meeting room compute, not directly into the Rally system. So it's really designed for one camera.
Okay, cool. And then other questions people had, J.R. Lepper also wanted to know, so with multiple mic inputs, are they treated as a single microphone by the software? I understand that's probably going to depend based on the software, but how is that generally handled by applications that you guys are familiar with?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So maybe to even make it more complex and then make it more simple is that if I have 7 microphones, each one of those having 8 beams, potentially that's 56 different inputs that could come at the software application. But what's happening is each mic pod has its own processor, and it's out of the 8 beams that are being picked up, it's going to say, yeah, this is the one I think is the best signal. It's going to send that down the line. Each microphone does that. At the hub, there is another processor that says, okay, of all those, the 7 different signals that are coming from the 7 different mics, which one is the best, and it's going to pick the best one. And so the application is actually only going to see one microphone input, but it's all being, the best one is being determined by the Rally system.
Okay, cool. Let's get some more questions. One for Ben from S Seasons. Curious to know what Ben has done to help users be comfortable using new technology.
Well, as far as new technology is concerned, I showed them how to use Skype, and they thought it was easier than using FaceTime. So that was pretty simple. As far as using all of our ridiculous bank software, that's a different story completely, because most people don't get it even after multiple trainings. But yeah, conference camera. As far as setting up the Logitech software, that's something that you really they never touch it. It's all like if you go through Zoom or if you go through WebEx, and all of those have their own training videos for them. So it's pretty simple.
Maybe I'll add on to that question. I mean, so do you have people who are concerned about being on video? We have some people that like, I don't want to be seen on video. Is that an issue for your people, or have they kind of moved past that?
Well, the people that are worried about being on video usually just sit at the edge of the room or stand outside the room where they can hear but not see. And but I don't think anybody in our bank is upset about being on video, as far as I can tell.
I think it depends. I mean, from my perspective, obviously I do this for a living, but I think for boardroom presentations is one thing. For conference calls, it might be a little bit different. I think it really does depend on the organization. But it's interesting how it is like definitely a company culture, thing as well. All right, Alan, question for you. This one comes from Joe. Can you write something on your pad and then zoom in on it so that we can see how the clarity of the writing resolves as you zoom in?
Well, let's see. I can let's see if I can write something on here. All right. I'm just writing in pencil, so let's see if I can. Now you're gonna ask me to test my capability with the pan and tilt here.
All of this is part of the challenge. Oh, can you put it back on here? Can you talk, Alan, so that it zooms in on you?
Yeah. All right, yeah. So I'll talk. So I'm the active speaker. I don't know. So can you see that? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can read my watch. I don't know. I mean, I'm zoomed in. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit more, and then just yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. That's the case. My mom's on the video and she's watching. I don't know. Just
all your fans. Okay, cool. Thanks for doing that. People are wanting to know what kind of watch you have.
It's Panerai.
All right. Todd would like to know, what kind of mic are the connections on the mics? Are they proprietary? Is there a specific connector type for the microphones? And people also want to know, are wireless mics going to be available one day?
So the connections on the mic pods are proprietary. We did that for a couple of reasons. One is we actually trying to discourage people from hooking up if we put a generic connection and we don't want people to hook up their own mic, because the system is really designed as a system, right? The echo canceller, the noise canceling, all that stuff is designed for all this particular hardware. The other part was just, a little bit trickier. There are so many leads going through this that kind of a standard connector didn't work. It's actually a connector we buy from Samsung, so but it is not something you can typically buy. But the cabling is, each mic pod has about a 3-meter cable on it. Excuse me. And so, if I put the hub underneath the table, and they can be daisy chained. I can use the mic pod hub, whatever, so I can extend those pretty readily.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Let's go to a question. Oh, so yeah, the wireless. We talked about the mics
wireless,
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So wireless clearly is the dream. Something we're working on. Because I suspect we probably won't. We will. I don't know if we'll ever do truly wireless. In other words, wireless power and wireless signal. in some ways, it's almost a behavioral thing versus a technical thing. I mean, you come in on a Monday morning, the person who used the conference room on Friday didn't plug in the mics, and so now they're dead, and so you can't use them. And so that's one of the challenges with pure wireless. For wireless signal, wired power, wireless signal, something we're looking at, the timing of all the mics, the speakers, all that kind of stuff is very, very tight. And so far we haven't really been happy with the way we've been able to do it with wireless, but it's something we're currently working on.
And then some other folks were asking about ceiling mounting the mics. Is that something that people do?
Yeah, the system is designed to be mounted on, the mics sit on the table. We actually haven't tried ceiling mounting them. It's from a connection standpoint, it's a little bit tricky. But yeah, they're really designed, because of the way the beamformer is set up, it's more of a horizontal versus a vertical, which is what you'd want for a ceiling mic. So it's really designed for table mounting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. This is an interesting one. This is from Samuel Brooks. Can Rallycam be used by itself for special events? AV application. Have you heard of the Rally being used? Ben mentioned that he threw a party in his office, but have other people use it for, like, I don't know, music performances or anything like that, or anything that you were aware of?
Yeah, I'm not aware. I mean, I know that we sell, so the camera can be purchased on its own. It's just called Rally Camera, and so you can buy it as a standalone. It's a standalone USB camera. We've sold lots and lots of those, and the predecessor to which was our PTZ Pro 2. So there are a lot of people who are using just the standalone camera. Some of that is being used for, maybe they've already got an audio system and they want to add video to an existing audio system, so they would just buy the camera standalone. Some is, like, as I mentioned before, in classrooms or auditoriums where they want to, kind of zoom in on the person in the front. Whether there's, people are doing concerts with them, I don't know that. I haven't heard that, but, who knows?
Okay. I thought I'd throw a tricky pitch to you. Okay, this is another interesting one. This one's from Sushila. Is there a way to make the Rally setup portable? Is it meant to be just a stationary setup, or is there a way to make it transportable from room to room?
So, readily transportable. I suppose that, that there are people who I'm sure will put these on carts. We have a lot of our products that people will put on carts and move around. So it could be done. It requires a power connection at the table and at the display. So that's something to keep in mind. But I suppose conceivably you could have a cart with some displays on it, wheel it in there, put the table hub on the table, and then string some mics out. In 5 minutes you could set it up. Yeah, it wouldn't be impossible by any means.
All right, cool. Let's go to another question for Ben. This one's from your buddy Sean Olson. What has the training curve been for your users using this system?
Press the home button so that it goes back, zooms all the way out, because people sit there and keep pressing the zoom in button and zoom in button, and now they're zoomed in on one slat on the blinds at the back of the room, and they can't see anything. So zoom all the way out, then you can zoom in on whoever you want it to be framed in the shot. That was the hardest part, to teach people to zoom out.
So yeah, let me address that. So what he's talking about is this auto cropping feature, and what he's using is the semi-automatic version. So what he's doing is he's pushing a button. What it does, you push the home button, it zooms, looks at the image, and then crops in on the people. The version version we'll be releasing in a few weeks will actually do that automatically, so it won't require any button pressing. It's just constantly scanning the room, constantly making adjustments for the people who are in there.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And another free.
Cool. Another question. This one's from Mike. So, is the only way to control the system by remote? Do you guys have any users that use touch panels with them?
Yeah. So, for example, if you use Zoom rooms, for example, we have people who use Crestron panels. So, yeah, certainly. So, there are some PTZ that's built into or system controls, that hardware controls that are built into the application. So again, the Zoom rooms is a good example of that. Others who are Crestron panel or something like that that are using to control the camera. So certainly that's doable. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Question from Lori. She wants to know, okay, so we get a lot of compatibility issues. Is it compatible with Zoom? Is it compatible with Skype for Business, et cetera? I think the blanket answer, Alan, if I'm not mistaken, is that it is hardware, or it's an application agnostic. But Lori's question is the Rally system compatible with Chromebook? So is there an operating system compatibility issue or anything like that folks ought to be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, it'll work with Chrome. So we're also we're certified Skype for Business, certified Teams. It works, of course, with Zoom. They don't really have a certification process. It is certified for Google's Hangout Meet, which of course is running on Chrome OS. So yeah, no problem there. So Windows, Chrome, and Mac OS. Yeah.
All right, very cool. All right, well, I think we've covered a lot of the different types of questions. So I just wanted to give you guys an opportunity, as we're starting to wrap up, share any final thoughts or advice that you might have. So Ben, we'll start with you. For folks that are maybe considering incorporating the Rally system, what do you think that they should know about it based on your experience?
The price point is perfect for, I guess, my size of business. The bank, of course, they told me as soon as it's available, get 5 more. And if you've got $2,500 to spend in your budget for that, this is the perfect product for that. For a lot of people, getting more of them would probably be better for all of your different boardrooms. If not, Logitech has other smaller products for smaller boardrooms that are also good.
All right, cool. And Alan, any final takeaways that you'd like the audience to walk away with today?
Yeah, so maybe just a little bit more generically. The nice thing about a USB connected device like this is, say I'm moving either into video for the first time in a bigger way, or I'm moving away from one of the legacy systems, a hard codec, all that kind of thing. And I'm thinking, okay, well, what am I going to do? There's Skype for Business, there's WebEx, there's Teams, So the nice thing about this is, you could pick up the hardware and it's going to work with whatever. So if you decide I'm going to go with Zoom, and then after whatever reason in a year you decide, let's try Microsoft Teams instead. Your hardware investment is set. You don't have to change out your hardware to do that. So it's because, as you mentioned, it's going to work with anything. So and then just kind of the wrap up of the system itself. We've really worked hard to make the video experience very good, great video quality. The audio pickup is very nice. It's got a really nice intuitive experience with the speakers at the front. And then the cabling is pretty straightforward as far as how you connect it, and being able to connect it and look good. And appreciate the plug that it's not particularly expensive to roll out as well. So I think it's a good system for people who we have small businesses, we have large enterprises that are deploying this. So it's a pretty good system for pretty much any size of business.
Okay, cool. And yeah, Dimforce also wanted to know, Alan, if you'd be willing to do some running laps around the table so that we can see the focus shift as you're moving around the room, or would you care to save that for the next event?
Yeah, I can, let me zoom out here. And then I guess maybe we can do 2 things. So I'll walk around, as I mentioned before, this room is about 25 feet long. The table's about 15, I think. And so, what I can do is I can walk around the room, and then not only can you see, so again, it isn't going to crop. We don't have that feature available yet, but you're able to at least see kind of how the image is working. And then the other part of it is you can see how, as I move, like for a big example, around the table, and you can hear me moving from one microphone to the other. It should, I hope, it's actually sounding, fairly consistent. Now I'm completely out of the image. It's going to sound fairly consistent. My voice I'm talking about the same level. So even between the 2 mics, it should sound fairly consistent. Hopefully that helped.
was actually very helpful. Thank you. All right, guys. So it is now time to announce the winner of our prize. So the winner of the Rally Cam that we have been talking about all this entire hour is going to go to Computer MD. Congratulations, Computer MD. You are the winner of our Rally prize today. If you have any questions about it, you should reach out to Ben Setliff because he knows it. So, but congratulations. Thanks again to everybody for hanging out with us today. Thanks to Alan and Ben. You guys were both awesome and definitely had a good time hanging out with y'all. And I definitely thought it was a good event. And thanks to everyone for asking all those great questions. I got too many to answer, so we're going to pass those questions all on to Logitech, and hopefully they'll get a chance to hit you guys up. So and make sure to check out all the other events that we got coming up by clicking on that orange button or sticking around until after the show. But until then, y'all, stay safe, keep it spicy, and we will see y'all back here next time. So long, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.